when a wealthy businessman named Nicholas Green made the bold decision to adopt 6 sisters from a local foster home. His neighbors were stunned. Whispers of judgment spread through the community, questioning his motives and the family's place in their affluent neighborhood. But Nicholas wasn't deterred. He was determined to give the girls the love and stability they deserved. What began as a journey to heal his own broken heart soon turned into a story of resilience and transformation, as Nicholas and his daughters faced prejudice, rejection, and seemingly insurmountable odds. But when a devastating storm struck the town, the very people who had doubted them found themselves turning to the Green family for help, and what happened next left everyone speechless. How did Nicholas and his daughters rise above the challenges to not only find acceptance, but also unite a divided community? Watch their incredible journey of love, strength, and hope unfold in Hearts of Grace. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments, what would you do if you had the chance to change someone's life forever? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire and remind us of the power of family and resilience. Now let's begin. Nicholas Green shifted in his leather chair, gazing at the skyline as it swallowed the last remnants of the evening sun. Warm amber light filled his penthouse in Midtown, casting soft shadows on the immaculate walls. Nicholas wasn't one for silence, yet it surrounded him, unfurling like a blanket every night, wrapping him in memories he couldn't escape. A few feet away, on his desk, sat a silver-framed photograph. It was the most important item in his otherwise pristine office, a picture of his daughter, Claire, taken just weeks before everything changed. She had her mother's smile and his determined eyes, and whenever Nicholas looked at her picture, he felt both pride and pain. Claire had been his world, his reason to succeed, his hope. But she was gone. Nicholas tried to fill the emptiness with work, wealth, and projects, things to keep his mind occupied and his heart distracted. Yet nothing worked. Claire's memory lingered, her absence a reminder of everything he hadn't been able to save, despite all his resources. The next morning, Nicholas received an invitation to a charity meeting at the New Horizons foster home. It was a place he'd supported financially for years, more out of a sense of duty than personal investment. But today, for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt compelled to go. He arrived in his usual attire, a gray suit and polished shoes, and nodded curtly as the director, Ms. Cortez, ushered him into a modest office. "We're grateful for all you do," Ms. Cortez began, flipping through a few files. "Your contributions help us run essential programs and keep our doors open to children who have nowhere else to go." Nicholas nodded, his mind wandering as he gazed around. He wasn't here to discuss finances, though he doubted Ms. Cortez knew that. Before he could make up his mind about what he wanted, though, she suggested he join her for a tour. They walked through the main hallway, stopping outside a small courtyard where children were playing. Nicholas watched, his eyes drawn to a group of girls laughing and skipping rope together. The eldest seemed about 11 or 12. The youngest, barely a toddler, struggled to keep up but laughed all the same. There was a simple, unfiltered joy in their play, a joy he hadn't felt in years. "Those 6 are all sisters," Ms. Cortez said softly, noticing his interest. "They've been through a lot: loss, transitions, uncertainties. They lean on each other as if nothing else matters." He watched as the eldest girl, a quiet, watchful child named Daphne, reached out to catch her younger sister before she tripped, her gaze both loving and protective. Nicholas felt his chest tighten. He was reminded of Claire, how she'd been so gentle and kind-hearted, always concerned with making sure everyone around her felt safe. "What happens to them if they can't find a home?" he asked quietly. Ms. Cortez's expression softened. "We don't want to separate them, but it's hard to find a family willing to adopt 6 siblings. The reality is that they may end up split across different homes." As the group returned to the office, Nicholas felt a sense of resolve building within him. He couldn't shake the image of the sisters' laughter, their togetherness, and Daphne's watchful eyes. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope, a sense that he could make a difference in someone's life again. That night, Nicholas sat in his study, flipping through the file Ms. Cortez had given him. It contained the girls' names, ages, and a few details about their backgrounds. Daphne, the oldest at 12, Sophie, thoughtful and reserved at 9. Gracie, curious and mischievous at 8. Amy, gentle and kind at 6. Ella, playful and fearless at 4. And Madison, the 2-year-old who barely seemed to understand what was happening around her. "What would you think of this, Claire?" he whispered, his voice lost in the quiet of the room. "Would you have been happy sharing your father's love with them?" A deep breath filled his lungs as he closed the file and stared at Claire's picture. He knew she would have wanted this, even encouraged it. And for the first time in years, Nicholas felt that maybe, just maybe, his heart had room for love again. The next morning, he made his decision. Nicholas picked up his phone and dialed Ms. Cortez's number. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly. "I'd like to start the adoption process for all 6 girls," he said, his eyes on Claire's picture. Nicholas's home was transformed over the following weeks. He hired decorators to design cozy, welcoming bedrooms for each of the girls, complete with new beds, clothes, toys, and small touches he thought would make them feel at home. He spent hours ensuring every detail was perfect, from pastel bedding to soft, hand-woven rugs and storybooks stacked by each bed. He even converted his large office library into a common area where the girls could play, read, and do homework together. When the day came for the girls to move in, Nicholas could hardly believe the nervousness bubbling within him. As he waited in his driveway, he watched the black SUV pull up, carrying the 6 sisters who would soon become his family. The car door opened, and the girls stepped out, clutching small bags and glancing around with wide, uncertain eyes. Daphne held Madison's hand, her expression a mixture of determination and vulnerability as she shielded her sisters from the unknown. Gracie peered up at the towering mansion, all mingling with disbelief. "Welcome home," Nicholas said, his voice warm as he stepped forward. The girls stared at him, some unable to meet his gaze. It wasn't until little Madison pointed at the large chandelier in the foyer that the ice began to break. "Is that all yours?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "No, it's ours now, all of ours," Nicholas replied with a soft smile, feeling his heart swell as he watched their expressions soften. "Would you like to see your rooms?" Daphne gave a small nod, and one by one, the girls followed Nicholas up the grand staircase. They moved in a cluster, staying close together like a bouquet of tightly held flowers. Adjusting to life together was anything but easy. Nicholas's once quiet home was now filled with laughter, chatter, and the occasional outburst of tears. He learned to navigate sibling squabbles, bedtime routines, and the challenges of 6 girls needing his attention all at once. But despite the exhaustion, he found himself feeling more alive than he had in years. Daphne took the longest to warm up to him, often watching Nicholas with guarded eyes. She was polite but distant, careful to never let her sisters see her hesitate. Nicholas respected her caution and didn't push her. He understood that trust couldn't be forced. Gradually, the sisters' personalities emerged. Sophie, the bookworm, took to the library instantly, losing herself in stories and facts. Gracie, full of curiosity, was always exploring new things, often enlisting Ella's help in her mischievous experiments. Amy, quiet and gentle, was content to play with her dolls in a corner or draw pictures for her new father. As the weeks passed, the girls began to accept their new reality, though they each did so in their own way. They clung to each other tightly, their bond forged through shared experiences. Nicholas noticed how Daphne always took the last portion at dinner, making sure her sisters had enough, or how Sophie quietly rearranged the bookshelves so the younger ones could reach their favorite stories. Nicholas felt his heart swell each time he saw them acting as a family. And in time, he began to feel like their father, though he knew earning their trust would take longer than he could imagine. Their new life, however, wasn't without its challenges. Nicholas was a fixture in the affluent world of social clubs and community events, and his decision to adopt 6 girls was met with mixed reactions. At a charity gala, he noticed whispers and glances, the judgment in their eyes barely concealed. "Did you hear about Nicholas Green's latest endeavor?" Barbara Johnson whispered to her husband as they sipped champagne, her voice tinged with skepticism. "6 girls? All at once?" Seems like he's trying to make a spectacle of himself. Tom Harper, an old acquaintance, added, "What could he possibly be thinking? It's unseemly." The word stung, though Nicholas showed no reaction. He knew he couldn't change minds overnight, but he'd made a promise to his daughters, and nothing would deter him. One evening, as Nicholas prepared dinner, he overheard Daphne and Sophie talking in hushed tones. "Do you think he'll change his mind and send us back?" Daphne asked, her voice laced with worry. Nicholas's heart ached. He set down the pan, wiping his hands before entering the room where they Saturday girls. "There's something I want you to understand," he said, sitting across from them. "This is your home now. You don't have to worry about leaving, because I'm not going anywhere." Daphne looked away, the walls she'd built still firmly in place. But Sophie met his gaze, her expression softening as she offered a tentative smile. It was a small victory, but for Nicholas, it meant the world. As time passed, Nicholas found small ways to connect with each of the girls. He started family traditions, Sunday dinners, movie nights, and weekend outings to parks or museums. These moments became the cornerstone of their new life, tiny threads that bound them closer together. One night, as they all gathered for a movie in the living room, Nicholas noticed Daphne inch closer, finally sitting beside him. She didn't say anything, but as the film began, she let her head rest on his shoulder for the briefest of moments. It was a moment of trust, a flicker of acceptance. Nicholas didn't move, savoring the quiet but powerful moment. His heart swelled with a quiet joy, knowing he was building something precious, something real, a family. The house felt alive. Each morning, laughter echoed through the hallways, filling every corner with new life. Despite the girls' resilience, though, life in the Green Mansion required major adjustments. Routine was new to them, having personal space, a consistent bedtime, even rules. Nicholas found himself thrown into fatherhood, learning the girls' personalities as they learned to trust him. Daphne, the eldest, kept her distance, her quiet watchfulness never wavering. She made sure her sisters followed the new routines, often volunteering to help with household tasks. Nicholas saw her determination, her fierce sense of responsibility, and admired her strength, even as he felt sad that she had to grow up so quickly. Sophie, at 9, became the quiet observer. She spent hours in the library, devouring books on every topic, especially adventure stories and fairy tales. Nicholas loved how she would bring books to him, eagerly sharing her favorite parts, her shy smile peeking through as she looked to him for approval. Gracie and Amy, at 8 and 6, were the family's heart and laughter. Gracie's curiosity led to endless questions and new discoveries. She was never far from Nicholas's side, asking him about everything from his favorite colors to how airplanes worked. Amy, the gentlest, gravitated toward her dolls and art supplies. She'd spend afternoons drawing, gifting Nicholas with little sketches she'd leave on his desk with a shy smile. Ella and Madison, the youngest, were the family's joy. Ella, for years old, took every new experience with wide-eyed wonder, and her excitement was infectious. Little Madison clung to her sisters, especially Daphne, but would sometimes fall asleep curled up in Nicholas's lap while he read them stories. Moments like this melted his heart. Nicholas, who had once known only quiet and solitude, found himself busy from dawn until long after dusk. There were days he wondered if he'd made the right decision. Was he prepared to be a father to 6 girls? Could he give them the security they needed? Each time doubts arose, he'd remind himself that he was where he needed to be. Together, they were finding a way forward. The community reaction to Nicholas's adoption quickly shifted from quiet surprise to open gossip. The Green Mansion, a fixture in the affluent neighborhood, became the center of unwanted attention. Nicholas faced cold smiles and whispers at the local country club and charity events. Some neighbors, like Tom Harper and his wife Elaine, voiced their disapproval openly. "What is Nicholas thinking, bringing those children here?" Elaine asked during a country club brunch, loud enough for Nicholas to hear as he passed. "This isn't some charity project." Barbara Johnson, one of his former business partners, chimed in, "People are concerned, you know. The Greens are known in this town, and this situation might affect property values." Nicholas bit back his anger. He understood that changing minds wouldn't happen overnight, but their words still stung. His neighbor saw his daughters as a situation, a word that felt too cold, too detached to apply to six bright, lively girls. But it wasn't just the adults. The girls began noticing the difference too. Sophie and Gracie came home from the playground one day. Their usual joy dimmed. Sophie's shoulders were slumped as she told Nicholas what had happened. "Some of the kids don't want to play with us," Sophie whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. They said we don't belong here." Nicholas felt his heart ache. He knelt down, looking into Sophie's sad eyes. "You belong here just as much as anyone," he said gently, resting a comforting hand on her shoulder. "This is your home, and I'm here to make sure you feel safe and loved." Sophie nodded, her sadness lifting slightly, but the hurt lingered. Nicholas found ways to show each of the girls that they were valued. He took them on individual outings to the local park, art museums, and the aquarium. One day, he took Amy to a pottery studio, knowing she loved to create. She beamed with pride as she painted a small mug for him, blushing when he praised her design. With Gracie, he'd take her to the science museum, watching her eyes light up as she marveled at the displays. He learned she loved insects, and the two spent hours discussing every detail she could find about bees and butterflies. Daphne was the hardest to reach, her trust slow to build. She spent her afternoons observing from afar, rarely initiating conversation. One evening, as Nicholas was preparing dinner, she appeared at the kitchen door, watching him chop vegetables. "Want to help?" he asked, careful to keep his tone light. Daphne hesitated, then nodded, stepping up to the counter. Nicholas handed her a bowl, and they worked in comfortable silence. Gradually, Daphne opened up, telling him about how she'd helped cook at the foster home and how much she missed their small routines. "You don't have to do everything for us," she murmured one night, her gaze unwavering. "We're used to taking care of ourselves." Nicholas set down his spoon, looking her in the eyes. "I know you're strong, Daphne, but you don't have to do it alone anymore. I'm here, and I'll always be here for you and your sisters." A flicker of relief crossed her face, a tiny crack in the wall she'd built, and Nicholas knew it was a step forward. As the holiday season approached, Nicholas wanted to formally introduce his daughters to the neighborhood. He organized an elegant welcome gala, transforming his mansion into a glittering venue with chandeliers, floral arrangements, and a buffet. He hoped to show his neighbors the beautiful souls he was now raising, praying it might help them see beyond their prejudices. The girls were thrilled, each of them dressed in colorful new dresses that Nicholas had helped them pick out. They practiced their greetings, eager to impress the guests. Daphne wore a light pink dress, her expression a mix of nerves and hope, while Sophie's blue dress made her eyes sparkle with excitement. As the clock struck 7, the girls gathered by Nicholas in the grand foyer, the sound of the string quartet filling the air. But as the minutes ticked by, the room remained sparsely filled. The girls exchanged uncertain glances, whispering amongst themselves. By 8 o'clock, only a handful of couples had shown up, most of them making polite excuses and leaving quickly. As Nicholas watched his daughters' faces fall, he felt a sharp pang of anger and disappointment. He saw Daphne's shoulders slump, her guarded expression tightening as she glanced around the empty ballroom. Gracie, who had been twirling in her purple dress, stopped, her eyes downcast as she clung to Amy's hand. Little Madison looked up at Nicholas, her brow furrowed with confusion. "Why isn't anyone here, Daddy?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Nicholas knelt down, gathering his daughters in a circle around him. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice steady. "Sometimes people don't understand, and that can make them act unkindly," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But that doesn't change who we are as a family. We belong together, and we belong here." The girls nodded, though he could see the hurt in their eyes. It was a bitter truth for them to confront, and Nicholas wished he could shield them from it. After the gala, Nicholas could see the toll that the community's prejudice had taken on his daughters. They had endured too many rejections, from cold stares in the neighborhood to whispers from the few kids they encountered at the park. The girls were starting to withdraw, their excitement about their new life dimming. One morning, Nicholas called the girls to the library for a family meeting. He decided after many sleepless nights, hoping to protect them from the painful isolation they were facing. "Girls," he began, looking at each of them in turn, "I've decided that for now we'll try something new. I want to homeschool all of you here, in our home." Daphne's eyes widened slightly, while the younger girls exchanged curious glances. Sophie's brow furrowed, and she asked, "Does that mean we won't be going to school with other kids?" "For now," Nicholas said gently, "we'll be learning here. I'll bring in the best teachers to help you learn everything you need, and we'll find other ways to make friends and be part of the community." The girls' expressions softened. Nicholas reassured them that this was a chance to learn at their own pace, to explore their talents without judgment. Over the following weeks, he converted the library into a cozy classroom, installing shelves filled with books, a world map, a chalkboard, and colorful posters. As homeschooling began, the girls started to relax. Without the burden of neighborhood criticism, they grew more confident. Sophie excelled in literature, while Daphne showed a knack for history. Gracie dove into science, and Amy expressed herself through art. Their days became filled with learning and laughter, and the house once again felt like a home. Nicholas joined them whenever he could, helping with math or joining in on their art projects. He discovered a new joy in these moments, watching his daughters thrive, their faces lighting up as they learned and explored. As part of their homeschool curriculum, Nicholas introduced the girls to a small business project. He wanted them to feel empowered, to know they were capable of creating something special. Together, they brainstormed ideas, and eventually, they settled on creating handmade gift baskets, each one filled with candles, soaps, and carefully selected items they'd make as a family. They transformed one of the unused rooms into a workshop with stations for each stage of production. Gracie loved arranging the items, while Amy poured her creativity into designing labels and ribbons. Daphne, always responsible, took charge of inventory, making sure everything was in order. Their project became a source of pride, each girl taking ownership of her role. Nicholas was overjoyed watching them work. Their spirits lifted as they crafted their baskets, chatting and laughing as they completed orders. Word spread, and soon neighboring towns were placing orders for the Trents' handmade goods. Their family business began gaining a reputation for its quality and care, and the girls blossomed with each new success. Just as they were gaining confidence, however, another blow came. Rumors circulated in the community, with whispers that Nicholas was using the girls for cheap labor and exploiting them for publicity. One evening, Daphne overheard a group of women gossiping about them at the local coffee shop. She returned home visibly upset, her hands clenched, and told Nicholas what she'd heard. Nicholas saw the hurt in her eyes, the anger she was struggling to contain. "We're not just a charity case," Daphne said, her voice steady but her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Why can't they see we're a family?" Nicholas placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "People often judge what they don't understand, but we know the truth, and that's what matters." Daphne nodded, drawing strength from his words, but Nicholas could see the lingering pain. He knew that this journey wouldn't be easy, that they would face many more challenges. But he was determined to protect his daughters, to prove to the world that love could overcome even the deepest prejudices. The gift basket business quickly became a cherished project for the Green family. Nicholas and the girls invested hours in their workshop, filling the baskets with handmade candles, soaps, and seasonal treats. Gracie often took the lead, her infectious energy pulling Ella and Amy into the process of decorating and arranging each item with care. They enjoyed making each basket unique, and their collective creativity turned their home into a thriving workshop. Daphne, now more comfortable around Nicholas, took charge of their finances. She tracked sales, organized supply orders, and meticulously recorded each transaction. She had a natural skill for numbers, and her pride grew with each positive review and successful order. Their small business blossomed as word of their craftsmanship spread. Shops in nearby towns began placing regular orders, and soon, local boutiques were displaying their products on elegant shelves. Each girl felt a sense of ownership and accomplishment as they worked together, and Nicholas beamed with pride, watching their confidence grow. One afternoon, as they were putting together a large order, Daphne noticed whispers on social media. Rumors were circulating cruel suggestions that Nicholas was using the girls for profit and treating them as cheap labor rather than his beloved daughters. A few parents at the community center had even suggested that Nicholas was taking advantage of the girls for publicity. When Daphne read the posts aloud, the sisters exchanged wounded glances, and Nicholas felt his stomach turn. The pride they'd felt just moments ago dimmed, replaced by hurt and uncertainty. Why do people keep saying those things? Sophie asked, her voice trembling. They don't even know us. Nicholas knelt down, looking at each of his daughters. People sometimes choose to believe what's easy rather than what's true, he said gently. But we know who we are. We're a family, and we're doing something good together. Daphne's gaze held a determined glint as she said, We won't let their words stop us. They resumed their work with a renewed sense of purpose, but Nicholas could see the pain lingering in their eyes. He knew this wound would take time to heal. To strengthen their sense of belonging, Nicholas encouraged his daughters to get involved in community service. Together, they decided to volunteer every Saturday at the Hope House homeless shelter, a place they'd heard about through a friend of Nicholas's. The girls were nervous at first, not knowing what to expect, but they soon found purpose in their new roles. Each of them took on different responsibilities. Gracie and Sophie served breakfast, while Daphne and Amy organized clothes and supplies for distribution. Even Ella and Madison helped by making small crafts to cheer up the younger residents. Slowly but surely, the girls found a sense of acceptance at the shelter. Mrs. Taylor, the shelter director, noticed their dedication and would often compliment their work, calling them her Saturday angels. The girls glowed with pride each time she praised them. One morning, as they were packing lunches, Mrs. Taylor approached Nicholas. Your daughters are remarkable, Mr. Green. They bring so much joy here. I've seen how hard it can be for families to come together, but you're doing something wonderful. Nicholas smiled, filled with gratitude for this small but meaningful acknowledgement. The girls had finally found a place where they were valued for their kindness, and he could see the positive impact it had on them. Word about the Green family's volunteer work began to spread. One day, a small article appeared in the local newspaper, featuring a photograph of the girls serving meals at Hope House. The headline read, Green family brings light to Hope House. For the first time, the community saw the family in a new light. The article painted them as dedicated members of the town, not as outsiders. A few neighbors even stopped Nicholas on the street to commend him, and Mrs. Chun, who owned the local bakery, sent a basket of pastries with a note of gratitude for his daughters. But while some attitudes softened, others held firm. At the neighborhood park, parents continued to gather their children when the Green girls approached. Some neighbors refused to acknowledge them altogether, crossing the street to avoid conversation. The dual reactions of warmth and prejudice became a daily part of their lives, and the family learned to take comfort in the kindness of a few rather than focusing on the rejection of others. As the holiday season approached, Nicholas decided to host a fundraiser gala for Hope House. The idea was to showcase the community's shared spirit and to raise funds for the shelter's winter needs. He hoped that by sharing his daughter's story of service, the town would see them for who they truly were. The girls spent weeks preparing. Daphne and Sophie worked with Mrs. Taylor to plan speeches, while Amy and Gracie helped decorate the ballroom with winter garlands and floral arrangements. They were nervous but excited, hoping this night would change the town's perception of their family. The evening of the gala arrived, and the mansion was transformed into an elegant winter wonderland. Guests filed in, mingling and admiring the decorations. The girls, dressed in beautiful dresses Nicholas had bought for the occasion, prepared to give their speeches with practiced poise. Daphne stepped up first, her voice wavering slightly, but growing stronger as she spoke. When our father adopted us, he gave us not only a home, but also a chance to be a family. We've been through challenges, but with him, we've found hope. The crowd listened attentively, and Nicholas felt a surge of pride as his daughters shared their heartfelt stories. Just as the evening seemed to be going well, Nicholas noticed some familiar faces exchanging murmured conversations in the back of the room. Marcus Fletcher, an old business competitor of his, held his phone up, showing something to a small group of guests. They frowned, whispered, and began quietly filing out of the ballroom, one by one. Nicholas's heart sank. As the guests thinned, Daphne faltered mid-sentence, her confidence shaken. The other girls gathered around her, confusion and hurt etched on their faces. By the end of the night, only a handful of guests remained. Mrs. Taylor and a few volunteers from Hope House stayed behind, offering their support, but the room felt empty, cold with the remnants of rejection. Nicholas knelt beside his daughters, their downcast faces breaking his heart. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with regret. Tears filled Gracie's eyes as she asked, "Why don't they want us here, Dad? We just wanted to help." He hugged them, gathering them close. Sometimes people aren't ready to understand, no matter how much kindness you show. But remember, what matters most is what's in here. He gently tapped his chest, hoping to lift their spirits. Despite the setback, Mrs. Taylor approached with a warm smile. "Your girls are incredible, Nicholas. They have more strength than most people here." Her words offered a small glimmer of comfort, but Nicholas knew the pain of the evening would linger in his daughters' hearts. In the weeks following the gala, Nicholas saw the impact the event had on his daughters. They became quieter, more cautious in public. Daphne withdrew, focusing on her studies, while Sophie and Amy took refuge in their creative hobbies. Nicholas felt the weight of their sadness, and he knew he needed to remind them of their worth. One evening, he gathered the girls in the living room for a family meeting. He prepared a small project for them, hoping it would rekindle their spirits. "I know it's been hard," he began gently, "but I want you to remember something. We're stronger together. We're a family, and no one can take that away from us. I thought it might be a good time for us to do something special together." He revealed his plan to expand their gift basket business into a family venture, each girl responsible for a role based on her strengths. Daphne would oversee operations, Sophie would handle packaging design, Gracie and Amy would be in charge of product quality, while Ella and Madison could help with the finishing touches. The girls exchanged hesitant smiles, slowly warming to the idea. In the following weeks, they threw themselves into the project, finding joy in working together. They transformed the mansion's basement into a workshop, filling shelves with their handmade products. Each successful order became a small victory, a reminder that they were capable of creating something valuable despite the town's judgment. Their bond strengthened, and they found comfort in the laughter and pride that filled their home once again. One Saturday morning, as the family was volunteering at Hope House, Mrs. Chun from the bakery stopped by with a group of community members who'd read about the family in the newspaper article. "I wanted to bring something to show our appreciation," Mrs. Chun said, handing over a large tray of pastries. "My daughter talks about your family all the time. She sees your girls as an example." Others nodded, expressing their gratitude for the family's dedication to the shelter. It was a small but meaningful shift, a sign that kindness was beginning to change some hearts. Mrs. Taylor approached Nicholas, her eyes filled with admiration. "People like you are rare, Mr. Green. And your daughters, they're truly a blessing to this community." Nicholas felt a renewed sense of hope, watching his daughters interact with the townspeople who'd once doubted them. Though some still held their distance, he knew they were making progress, one small gesture at a time. But even as they gained support, the family remained cautious. They knew the road ahead was uncertain, but their resolve was unwavering. Together, they were creating something beautiful, a family built on love, resilience, and compassion. In early spring, a devastating storm swept through the region. Heavy rains turned streets into rivers, cutting off access to the town's hospital and isolating the community. Emergency services were overwhelmed, leaving many elderly residents and families trapped without adequate resources. Power outages spread, and stores quickly sold out of supplies. Nicholas and his daughters listened to the storm's howling winds from their home, hearing the rain beat down as it grew worse by the hour. Despite the fear the storm brought, Nicholas saw an opportunity. His large home, equipped with an emergency generator, could be a safe haven for those in need. "Girls," he said, gathering his daughters in the living room, "we've been given a chance to help. Our home has space, power, and resources. Let's open our doors to the town." The girls exchanged determined nods, each of them ready to help however they could. They prepared rooms, gathered supplies, and converted the basement into a makeshift shelter, setting up cots and gathering blankets, water, and food. As they worked, they could hear the growing sounds of distress outside. Soon, people began arriving at their doorstep, families with young children, elderly neighbors, and even those who had once been their harshest critics. Marcus Fletcher, Nicholas's old business competitor, arrived with his frail mother, both of them soaked from the rain. Without hesitation, Daphne and Sophie guided them inside, offering blankets and warm tea. For the first time, the town's residents saw the Green family for who they truly were. Nicholas and his daughters worked tirelessly, treating each guest with kindness and compassion. They helped carry supplies, comforted crying children, and reassured the elderly. Mrs. Henderson, one of the family's harshest critics, arrived late one night, her elderly husband leaning heavily on her arm. She looked at Nicholas, her usual disdain replaced by shame. "I know I haven't been fair," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But, thank you." Nicholas gave her a gentle smile. "You're welcome here," he replied simply. Throughout the night, Nicholas and his daughters moved from room to room, attending to each guest's needs. Their compassion was unwavering, and the warmth they extended softened the hardest of hearts. The girls offered words of comfort to those who were afraid, serving hot soup and playing quiet games to keep the children occupied. For the first time, their home felt not like a place of wealth, but like a sanctuary, where all were welcome and safe. The following day, the storm subsided, but the town's infrastructure was badly damaged. Roads remained blocked, power lines were down, and communication was sparse. Those who had taken shelter in the Green Mansion stayed, knowing they would need help to get through the aftermath. As the community slowly recovered, Nicholas and his daughters became the bridge between the people and the outside world. They organized teams to clear debris, distributed supplies from their home, and helped people contact family members. The townspeople, many of whom had previously avoided the Greens, now relied on them. Daphne took charge, coordinating volunteers and directing resources with a sense of authority that surprised even Nicholas. Sophie and Gracie comforted those who felt overwhelmed, while Amy, Ella, and Madison helped wherever they could, their youthful optimism bringing hope to everyone they encountered. Mrs. Taylor from Hope House arrived to offer her support. Watching the family lead the town through such hardship filled her with admiration. "You and your daughters are extraordinary, Nicholas," she said. "You're showing everyone what it means to be a true family." Nicholas thanked her, but he knew that his daughters deserved the real praise. They had risen above the judgment and prejudice of their neighbors, meeting each challenge with grace and compassion. Over the next week, the community worked together to rebuild, the Green family at the forefront. As the townspeople saw Nicholas and his daughter's dedication, they began to understand the strength of their bond. The family who had once been ridiculed was now celebrated as a beacon of hope. When the town's main access road was finally cleared, Nicholas and his daughters held a press conference in the community center, surrounded by their grateful neighbors. Daphne stepped up to the podium, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. "When our father adopted us, he gave us a new chance at life," she began, her voice carrying through the room. "We've faced challenges, and there were times when we felt like we didn't belong. But this community has shown us that when we come together, we're stronger." Tears filled Nicholas's eyes as each daughter shared their perspective. They spoke of the judgment they had faced, the friendships they'd formed, and the love they'd received. And when they finished, the crowd erupted in applause, many people visibly moved. Mrs. Chun, the local bakery owner, approached Nicholas with a tearful smile. "Thank you, Nicholas. You and your daughters have given us a gift we can never repay." A few weeks later, the town held a dedication ceremony for the Green family, unveiling a plaque in the town square. It read, "In honor of the Green family, whose resilience and compassion transformed our community. Their strength reminds us that love is the strongest force we have." As Nicholas and his daughter stood before the crowd, their neighbors gathered around them, offering hugs and words of gratitude. The same people who had once crossed the street to avoid them now crossed it to express their thanks. The girls' faces shone with pride as they stood together, holding hands. They knew that this moment was more than just a ceremony. It was the community's acknowledgement of their family, their worth, and their place in the town. Life slowly returned to normal, but the town was forever changed. The Green family became integral members of the community, known not just for their kindness, but for their strength and unity. People who had once whispered behind their backs now approached them with respect and admiration. Nicholas watched with quiet joy as his daughters found their place in the world. Daphne and Sophie became mentors to other children in the community, sharing their experiences to inspire others. Gracie continued to volunteer at Hope House, her infectious enthusiasm brightening everyone's day. Amy developed her passion for art, her paintings adorning local shops, while Ella and Madison helped organize community events, their youthful energy lighting up every gathering. Neighbors who had once been distant now sought out the family's friendship, eager to support them and show their appreciation. It was a transformation Nicholas had never anticipated, but one he embraced wholeheartedly. Years passed, and the Green family grew into a beloved pillar of the town. Daphne went on to college, studying community organization, determined to help others as she'd been helped. Sophie became a teacher, her love of books and learning inspiring her students. Gracie pursued a career in social work, working to support families in need, while Amy continued her art, her paintings earning recognition throughout the county. Ella and Madison, still young, were just beginning to explore their dreams, but they knew they had a family who believed in them every step of the way. As Nicholas watched his daughters blossom, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. What had started as a desire to fill the emptiness in his life had grown into something far greater, a legacy of love, compassion, and resilience that would endure for generations. The town had been forever changed by the Green family, and Nicholas knew that he too had been transformed. Together, they had overcome prejudice, healed old wounds, and built a home where acceptance and love flourished. Years later, the Green family's story continues to inspire. People from neighboring towns often visit the town square to see the plaque dedicated to Nicholas and his daughters, marveling at the transformation their love brought to the community. One sunny afternoon, Daphne, now a mentor and advocate for foster youth, spoke at a local event celebrating community unity. With her sisters sitting proudly in the front row, she shared their journey once more, a tale of perseverance, love, and the belief that everyone deserves a family. After the event, Nicholas, surrounded by his daughters, turned to the crowd and smiled. Our story isn't just ours, it's a reminder of what kindness and resilience can do. If you've been touched by this story, share it with others. Let's keep spreading hope and love. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories that remind us of the power of love, family, and perseverance. Together, we can share these messages with the world. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next story.